All right, I'm live. I'll do the normal thing that I typically do at this particular time as I'm waiting for people to trickle into the live stream. And that is to check, make sure everything is going good on all the platforms. Now, today I will just mention I've actually added Facebook. So there's going to be 5 destinations. I didn't advertise it. I didn't. Facebook's been messing with me big time here recently, and somehow now I don't know. I'm out of Facebook jail, and I can apparently post again on my my page, my Canadian Libertarian page. So what the hell? I said, right? Can't get any. I don't even know how it happened last time, where they said there was a copyright thing when it was just me interviewing Mark Vandermoss. The whole conflict in the Middle East thing. I won't even say the words for don't want to dare to piss off certain people because, I don't know, for some reason, there's certain subject matter that you're just not allowed to talk about, apparently. I don't know. But either way, this is going out to X. Let me just check on that. Of course, Rumble, YouTube, Odyssey, and over on the Facebook. Because I know that's the thing. I have quite a few people that do follow my Canadian Libertarian Facebook page. It's actually one of the most active social media pages that I have. So, for the people that don't want to switch over to different platforms, maybe create, a username or a channel over there so they could do so. Well, I like to help out the peeps as much as I can, or the people that like to follow my content. So yeah, it's going to be live streamed to Facebook, and I'm not sure if those comments actually come up, but I might get a chance to check into them. But this is a really important topic that we're going to be dealing with today. As you folks know, they're coming at us fast and hard with we've already got Bill C-11, C-18. That's all. Those are already law, right? Those are already implemented. Those are already ways that they're trying to silence and squash our voice and, forcefully redistribute content, right? To pick and choose who's going to be, the winners or who can be seen or heard, or the losers or those who are going to be shoved at the proverbial back of the bus. And we know exactly who those types are going to be. Yeah, people like myself, right? As if I'm not already far enough back at the bus. I mean, if you push me any further to the back of the bus, I mean, I might as well just go the emergency exit, right? I wouldn't even be on the bus at that point in time. But anyways, we're going to get to that. And of course, the crazy part about the fact that both sides of the political divide are supporting this, right? So where do you got to turn for refuge or any of these establishment parties, right? At least the conservatives for a while, right? We're trying to build up their political capital tank, but I guess they're pretty confident now, based on the polling numbers, that hey, they've built up enough of that political capital, and now they're going to start even expending it before they've even come to power, right? Nothing like getting the horse out in front of the cart. That's well, I mean, once again, we have to acknowledge they are progressives driving the speed limit. So yeah, they're going to get there, but apparently they're even going to try to get there even quicker, right? They've put their, taking their foot off the brake and are somewhat applying it to the go fast pedal. Not much, right? But judiciously enough to try to pretend that you're relevant, and in what way? That you're going to be just as tyrannical or just as on board with, suppressing Canadian speech or creating this this avenue where you can make digital ID the new normal. And I mean, folks, whether you're talking about that liberal letter, don't forget about that leaked liberal letter. Remember, digital ID, right? That was part and parcel of it. So, just because they didn't get it done, in the past, and you got to remember, anyone that's saying, "Oh, it's these damn Trudeau liberals trying to take away our freedoms and control our online content and what we're allowed to do or see or hear," no, you got to remember, you don't have to go that far back, just to the Harper regime. And with Vic Tays, basically, he was the first one. It was the conservatives, actually. Once again, you got to give kudos where it's due, although it's not a good kind of thing. But yeah, the conservatives were actually ahead of the liberals at the time in terms of trying to create online legislation. What is so striking, though, is the difference. When it was the conservatives, right? I use that term loosely, obviously, that were trying to introduce that bill and using the fear of the online child pornography and stuff like that. And the fact that they're just trying to protect the kids. Remember Vic Taves, you're either with us or you're with the child pornographers, right? Setting that up. But, it's crazy that most, and which when I say the media, right, academia, these big social media platforms, And of course, the left, the liberals, and New Democrat, they were all against it. Everyone joined forces to say how terrible of the conservatives to try to, creep some kind of authoritarianism or invade our privacies online by even daring to suggest this. And you remember the rhetoric, I'm sure some of you do, but seems quite quiet these days from those very same actors, right? Now it's mum's the word, and seems like both sides of that political divide are not just going along, but now the liberals are introducing basically the same bill with Poilievre basically supporting it. So yeah, not much help for those who want to stand in defense of their freedoms, especially if you're talking about in the political realm. You got no choices, folks. Well, except for those fringe, right, parties like the PPC or the Libertarian Party. But as we know, the establishment, the current paradigm, the status quo, they are not going to allow it. Not that I have anything against, an upstart or a challenging alternative party, right, to disrupt the status quo. Something has to do it. But, in Canada, especially under the first past the post system, and the fact that there's so many Canadians that do rely on maintaining the status quo and the current ruling establishment at all of our expense, there's a substantial, sizable portion of that poor population, folks. And they're the ones who are genuinely, they're voting, right, to not just socially and economically enslave us, but to even control what we're allowed to see, hear, or what we do online. That one last bastion that we had where there was at least some semblance of freedom. Yeah, they're coming for that too. And like I say, hard and fast. Anyways, I'm just going to check, make sure people know that I am live streaming. Oh, wow. I see the followers really jumped up there on the old X platform. Wow. Gained a whole bunch there in a pretty short order. So that's good to see. Let me just make sure, like I say, this is playing. Yes, it is. Okay. All right. I'll just let people know that I am live. I'm live. Still don't know how to make it aware to people on X other than just making my own posts, right? But I still don't know how to quite make that work so that people get prior notice, right? So I'll just, like I say, do what I normally do and let them know now. I mean, why not, right? Once again, I am the one man band, self promotion. I do the whole thing. I'm the production crew. Right? I'm the distributor. I'm the advertiser. The whole spiel, and the man behind the mic as well. Oh, and by the way, I will point out. Actually, why did that just pause on me here? Okay. Okay. So let me once again. Just for you folks before actually, no, let me check these other ones. But yeah, I've got a little announcement here. Well, some of you may have already noticed by looking in the background. And of course, I've been messing with the lighting again, trying to get everything perfected here in terms of the background. I'll give you just a little heads up that, yeah, I still have yet to figure out how I'm going to do it. But even though I can be a creature of habit at times, you can't peg me that way, right? Which is why I guess you could say I'm not a conservative in all areas or aspects of my life. That's for sure. Which is why, once again, I don't typically get along with both sides of the political divide because I'll hold each and every one of them to account. But as you can see, let me just mute that here. Is in my background right here behind me, I got, and I'm so happy to have got it. These are an entire set. Was it like 19 of the main encyclopedias, another 10? Anyways, what was it, 34 books in total, encyclopedia, the entire Encyclopedia Britannica set, and they're leather bound. Got them. They're used. Got them for a great deal though. And once again, this is one area, as folks know, I already want to, starting to build up quite a large, well, not in comparison to a lot of people, but a substantial library for someone like myself of books that as it pertains to philosophy and knowledge. And once again, it's all over the place. I mean, I got Karl Marx over here, right? I got Jordan Peterson, I got Ayn Rand, I got Aristotle, I got, like, it's just like I say, it's all over. I got Mises, I got Lysander Spooner, right? I got Hayek, like I say, all areas of it, right? I've got the Kennedys, right? I've got some Trump stuff. I've got a wide range of material and books, resources from many different people, many different thinkers, past and present. But one thing I was missing was, an actual full set, an encyclopedia set And I mean, this was a set, these are set that are decades old. So no matter what, Wikipedia might say, or how much wokeism creeps into, public education or in our online resources and material or sources of information, when you have a physical copy like this, well, once again, that's always and forever going to be, at least, and of course, that's going to become like a family heirloom for me. Pass it on to my kids, they'll pass it on to their kids, and so on and so on and so on. So this is the kind of information that will always be available for at least people that know me or in my community, for anyone that wants to have access to it. And that's vitally important. And I definitely recommend and suggest for anyone that can afford to do so. And like I say, you can find these kind of resources, on all different, like, buy and sell platforms, Facebook Marketplace, Amazon and places at fairly reasonable prices. So, you don't have to be wealthy, because I'm definitely not wealthy, but I recognize, and actually someone was actually mentioning on X there, they were saying, asking me about, Ben, are you like a Bitcoin guy, or are you a gold guy in terms of sound money? And I say, well, this is to me, and my answer was, I'm all for Bitcoin, gold, silver. Hey, if you got a store of copper, anything that's a valuable resource that can be converted into money somehow, right? That's always good. Now, I always make sure that I'm not just hedging from one. So I wouldn't have a portfolio just built and based upon Bitcoin, even though I recognize that it will definitely play a role in the future. And in particular, when CBDCs start to become a thing, which, yeah, they're pushing for those too, right? And that's kind of in conjunction with this digital ID. But, not only are precious metals such as gold and silver, not only are they great in terms of hedging against, fiat and the protection from the inflation that happens as a consequence of government issued fiat. They're great hedges, great stores of value, and great protection against inflation. But the other things that are vitally important, right, is, do you have a means to protect yourself and those that you care about, your loved ones? That's a really important thing that you have to think about. Do you have knowledge at your disposal, which is another really important thing to be thinking about? So there's a multitude of things that we need to be thinking. Do you have access to food, right, and clean drinking water, no matter what happens, what scenario plays out going forward? Because those are all things, right? Fine, or precious metals, digital cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, great things to have, like I say, and they will be applicable and have their own form or function. But once again, there are other areas. Think about, all you really got to think about is, what does a person truly require to sustain themselves, right? Food in the belly, a roof over your head. You got a roof over your head. Do you have property? Do you have, like I said, a means to grow your own food? Are you living in an area where you have access to other people who may grow their own food, and maybe you can use like a bartering system for them? Once again, any possible way that you can hedge against the kind of things that we're seeing that are ever encroaching and creeping into our lives, the kind of totalitarianism that seems to be like getting closer and closer and closer on a regular basis. The more access to things to counter that stuff, the better off you will be in the long run. And yeah, this is not a sales pitch, right? I'm not selling anything. I'm just offering what I consider to be sound advice. Anyway, so yeah, I see everything's going good over on Odyssey. I see Rumble's working good. Oh, Facebook. Let me check Facebook here real quick. Click on that. And then we will definitely, okay, yeah. So yeah, everything's going good. Excellent. So things I like to see. The things I like to see is when everything's going good. I'll just say hi real quick there to E Sharp. What's going on, E Sharp? Good morning from Saskatchewan. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, that's another thing I always take into account. Yes, it is morning. So another reason why I suppose there's probably less people in the chat. But like I say, we'll give them time. Give them time. People maybe grab their cup of coffee, right? Sit down and let's just get right into this stuff, as they say. But yeah, thanks for joining the stream, you and anyone else that's in the chat. Really appreciate that. Let me close up a couple other windows. I did just want to say this. I won't even bring it onto the screen. just another little thing before we actually get into the subject matter at hand. But I find it hilarious. This was a Globe and Mail article, right? And it was a Rosa Saba. Well, a repost of a copy and paste of the Canadian Press. So this was published February 23rd, 24, with the headline, "Why Canadians See the Biggest Grocers as the Villains of Food Inflation." Geez, I wonder why Canadians believe that it's grocers, right? Who typically make very, very, like we're talking in the single digits in terms of profitability or markups. When you're talking average day over, like some would be more, some would be less, but you typically have, what is it? I think it's less than 4% typically as your margin when you're talking about groceries, which is already, that's another area where big government interventionism is a major cause for that. But I will just say it's hilarious that someone in the establishment media is saying, why Canadians see the biggest grocers as the villains of food inflation. Well, geez, could it be that, the politicians, the Jagmeet Singhs or the Trudeau Liberals and those who constantly use that political rhetoric and point their fingers elsewhere rather than, the fact that, no, it's those in government, it's the NDP and the Liberals who are propping each other up, right? Or I should say the NDP are the lapdogs of the Liberals and helping to prop the Liberals up while the Liberals, control and dominate things. But, it's all that, debt borrowing and money printing, right? It's all that massive stimulus and spending, those debts and deficits that the true Liberals are spending so Canadians don't have to. But meanwhile, damn well as a Canadian, oh, you're paying for it. Now, Trudeau's not paying for it. You're not seeing his trust fund being depleted. No, you're paying for it. And it's not in the form of taxes. Well, it is. But inflation is like a stealth tax, right? And that way they can put it on everybody, because we all got to have our groceries, we all got to eat, we all got to buy our gas to put in our tanks to get to work, we all got to buy, if you're relying on heating oil, you got to buy it, right? If that's your source of heat, or all the other things that we consume, right, just to get by, right? Right? I'm not talking about living extravagant lifestyles. I'm talking about just for the bare basic necessities of modern day life. We all have to do it. So we're all paying through the nose, I'll add, with these inflationary aspects. But yet they want to blame grocery stores. And why are Canadians falling for that? Well, it's because they're not listening to people like myself, right? They're not being privy to this kind of knowledge. They don't understand Hayekian, like Austrian economics, or even Milton Friedman, right? The Chicago School of Classical Liberal Economics, right? Or monetarism, which, not saying he's perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but even him, as well as Hayek, who were Nobel Prize winning economists, could point out, well, your inflation, and I mean, a matter of fact, just a Google search, right? All you have to do, and even with Google, with all their woke stuff, you can still even find on these search engines who the culprits are of inflation. And it's literally, it'll tell you, even if you just type the search into where does inflation come from? Well, even Google will tell you, yeah, that's a government thing, right? But once again, large, substantial portion of the populace don't pay attention to this. They just watch their establishment media hacks. And when the establishment media brings on these politicians or puts a mic in front of their face, they're not apparently, either they're not wise enough or not competent enough, not knowledgeable enough, or just completely unwilling to challenge the rhetoric of these politicians, because they basically allow that rhetoric and basically parrot that rhetoric with no pushback or challenging to it whatsoever. So that's why Globe and Mail, right? Yeah, and Canada Press, that's why Canadians believe that it's those bad, evil groceries, right? Those grocery stores. Those are the people that are responsible for all this stuff, right? No. Once again, don't own up to actually government being responsible. No, you wouldn't want to do that. And why would that be? Let's see. Those in the media, oh yeah, getting propped up by government forcing us, the taxpayers, or should I say, they're still, I would call them still yet to be paid in full in terms of these kind of debts that are incurring. I'd say they're going to be paid off by future and successive generations. But damn well that those are the ones that are benefiting. So why are they not willing to hold government to account? Well, people like myself have been warning about that for years. Yes, the minute you start buying off and paying off the media, right? Well, first of all, they were already very much left-leaning and basically liberals and progressives themselves, right, that dominate most of these institutions. But now there's even less of an incentive to challenge them and much more of an incentive to just go along to get along. So they keep collecting that paycheck, right? And especially if you think about now with how many of these established media outfits are having to, lay off. I mean, think about Vice Media, basically, even Vice Media. And like, come on, Vice, all you had to do was actually try to counter the ruling establishment and not parrot establishment media talking points, right? That's all you had to do, bare minimum. But no, you couldn't do that. You had to be an ideologically driven, alternative news outlet. And how well did that work for you? Yeah, go woke, go broke. But once again, they're all, it's a fast race to the bottom, and none of them seem to be willing to try to even get off, that ship as it's sinking. They don't even want to jump on a lifeboat, right? The only lifeboat that they think is the one that's worthwhile is, once again, the ones that are the captain of the ship that's going down, which is government. It's like, well, that's not going to help you, right? I mean, the captain might say, here, you can get to the farthest part of the bow that's going to be the last to go down, but you're still going down, man. You're still going down. Make no mistake about it. And about it. Anyways, yeah, let me just check here. Oh, YouTube, right. That's on YouTube too. Just make sure everything's going good over there as well. I do believe so. Yeah, so it looks like all of them are going good. Excellent. So let me just get back in. I'll just say, I see there's a few more peeps have joined the chat. Say hi, and then we'll get into covering the big topic at hand, which is, this online harms bill. What is it? Bill C-36, I think they're calling it. It will add digital ID, and that's going to be part of the new normal. It'll start out, as, it's just to protect kids from being able to see porn, right? As if that will really happen. Yeah, right. Some politician writing stuff on parchment or paper or on a digital screen, that will have the effect of preventing, kids or teenagers from accessing porn. Sure, right, it will. Right. No, we all know that's not the case. Matter of fact, the best barrier or obstacle to that stuff, and even that's not guaranteed, is an active role of parents or other people in the community to help. And that's the other thing. It's not even that I suggest that a parent should be looking over your kid's shoulders. No, how about you just raise them right? And give them good morals and ethics and standards. And once again, that's still never going to guarantee perfection in all scenarios or cases, but it's much, much better than using the proverbial government club to try to play whack-a-mole, right? Because it never works. It never has. Guess what? Murder's illegal. Rape's illegal. Theft is illegal. And yet it's still rampant. Happens all the time. So imagine that. Criminals don't obey laws, or people with criminal intent don't obey laws, or people that want to do things that really, aren't criminalized, but just, a social faux pas or something that we hope that wouldn't happen or whatever. Yeah, like I said, none of that stuff has ever worked, and it never will work. But once again, ideologues, they can't stand to listen to common sense or reason. That's an outlier to them. Hey, what's going on, the Mad Catter? Thank you very much for joining the live stream. Really appreciate that. GTO Mama. What's up, GTO Mama? The gas prices are the issue. Blaming the grocery stores. Cost to get food to market. Exactly. And the gas prices, right, are a consequence and a result of government intervention in the economy. I mean, carbon tax is just one of them. But have you ever seen, and it's not that hard to find this information out, but have you ever seen the breakdown of your gas prices and all the multitudes of taxes, whether it's provincial, federal, or there's many taxes, right? Just like with some of your vices, like alcohol and cigarettes and stuff like that, right? It's government. Government is always the root cause of these ridiculous prices. But yet, once again, because the majority of the populace aren't privy to the kind of knowledge that you and I are, they just keep going along and parrot these ridiculous scenarios where it's just the people who provide food for you, right? They're the bad people. Okay. Oh, right. Well, like I say, that's what I'm here for. Is I try my best to help out as many people as possible. But as you folks know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And you can try to lead people to knowledge, but you can't make them think, right? And matter of fact, in this world, it's even hard to get them to even lead them to the knowledge because they have to know you exist. That's a big thing. You can't lead anybody to nothing if they don't even know that you exist. And yeah, social media platforms and the ruling establishment, they're always hell bent and busy making sure that people like myself have a very, very limited reach and a small audience. But hey, I'm cool with that. Small audience or not, I recognize the audience that I do have are the type of people that punch way above their weight. And thank you very much, folks, for all of you who continue to do what you do and in terms of stand up and speaking out. So let me just bring on the first article. Actually, I got a couple more comments here. Let me get in there. The solution, print, yeah, valueless money. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. What's that? You know, that socialist, that little meme where, yeah, rather than given, was it, given the, or even the old expression, yeah, rather than teaching a man how to fish, no, you just keep telling them that, well, you'll have to rely on me forever to eat your fish, right? But yeah, print and valueless money. It's just, once again, the proverbial dog. Oh, more value. Yeah, exactly. I kind of knew what you were saying anyways there. Kids can't watch porn, but they can be taught sex in kindergarten by men in drag. What a fucking, well, that's a great point. See, this is another thing. See, I wasn't even thinking about that at this particular time, but I'm so glad that you point out, because yeah, kids can't watch porn. Like, yeah, the liberals are acting as though they're so highly concerned that some young kids or teenagers might be accessing porn. But yeah, you can what was it you said there? But yeah, they can be taught like, and yeah, like oral sex. So you can get, no, yeah, you don't need to go online to get your porn. Yeah, you can just get that through the education system. Or hey, if you want to cut off your tits or your junk or take hormone blockers or whatever as kids, like as teenagers, that's okay. But yeah, see porn? No, that's or at least porn online in terms of like some of the the private sector. I guess that's really what it is no private sector porn for you. You got to get your sexual deviancy and fill of porn through government approved outlets and such, right? In the education system, apparently. But yeah, great point there, Mad Catter. Excellent point, I'll actually add. Problem, reaction, solution. Yeah, all provided by the government. Yeah, Hegelian dialectic. Exactly. Well put, GTO Mama. Anyways, like I say, I'm going to start bringing up some of these, but I just find it absolutely, like I say, amazing how both sides, you got nobody that's going to stand up now, folks, right? All of the establishment are on board with this stuff. Okay, so let me bring this on because let's just get some of the details. The liberals are set to let me make sure everything's good over there first. Yep, everything's looking good. The liberals are set to unveil an online harms bill today. Here's what you need to know. CBC News looks at the origins of the bill, the hurdles it has faced in the past, and what experts want to see. It's reported by Peter Zimoniak, February 26, 2024. The federal government is introducing its let me just bump that up there. It's long-awaited online harm legislation today after its last attempt to tackle online hate died when the 2021 federal election was called. The text of the legislation has not yet been made available, but its 46-word title indicates that it will involve changes to the criminal code, the Canadian Human Rights Act, and laws that make reporting online child pornography mandatory. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said last week the bill is designed to protect children from being subjected to hatred, to violence, to being bullied, and seen and being affected by terrible things online. So what, right? Well, I mean, he's not even saying anything about child pornography, is he? Right? No, Trudeau has his own intentions for doing so, right? Both the left and side have their own, reasons for supporting the invasion of privacy and the introduction of digital ID. But once again, regardless of the reasons, we as Canadians are the ones who are going to suffer the consequences for this kind of thing and for the fact that it's getting bipartisan support. When the whole of the establishment, both sides of the political divide, are going along with this. In June of 2023, the federal government introduced Bill C-36, legislation meant to crack down on hate propaganda, hate crimes, and hate speech. So once again, obviously, when it was introduced originally, there was nothing when you talk about this. It wasn't the fact that of child pornography or anything that has to do with that or child exploitation. No, this is telling you that the original intention is anyone that Trudeau deems as hate or hateful towards his government, in reality, the people that he hates, right? That's really the truth of the matter, right? If you read between the lines, it's people that Trudeau hates. He wants to be able to control even more of what they say, do, or can consume on social media or on the internet in general. David Lametti, the guy that had to resign in shame, the guy that was all gung-ho and put forth the whole notion of, or was part and parcel of the Trudeau Liberals in terms of invoking the Emergency Act, right? And now that a federal judge has actually come out and said, no, that was unconstitutional. Geez, you would think what was he, the justice minister, right? You would think the justice minister understands the whole point of having a Canadian Charter Rights Bill, rights and freedoms, even though, once again, they love to play fast and loose with the language. This is the problem with political or legalese interpretations of what it means to be a free human being, which is why, you need to understand that without having to reference, right, the legal class, right? That's how you have a population or a citizenry of people who are willing to stand in defense of the freedoms, is for them to actually know what it is to be free or what freedom of speech entails, or the fact that it's inherent and an inalienable right that's not granted to you by government, right? David Lametti, then the Minister of Justice, said the legislation was designed to target the most egregious and clear forms of hate speech that can lead to discrimination and violence. Bill C-36 would have allowed individuals or groups to file hate speech complaints with the Canadian Human Rights Commission. It also included measures aimed at preventing abuse of the process. Bill C-36 was roundly criticized by privacy experts and civil liberties groups who said its requirement that online platforms remove content flagged as harmful within 24 hours would encourage companies to take an overly cautious approach, resulting in suppression of free speech. Although you're not hearing much pushback these days, are you? Once again, it seemed like it was like I said, when it was the Conservatives under Vic Tays who was trying to introduce similar legislation and use similar rhetoric in terms of the child exploitation and online pornography and all that stuff. Yeah. Either you're with us or you're with the pornographers type of rhetoric. But like I say, all your big social media companies, Googles, your YouTubes, your Facebooks, your Twitters, all the big Instagram, they were all, and the establishment media, right? People in academia, they were all up in arms and against it. And they all came together to fight it back. And it never got to see the light of day as a consequence of that kind of, at that least show of unity, but mostly from people on the left, right? But even someone who would be centrist or common sense conservatives, that very small group there is, everyone was on board with saying, nope, hands off the internet. Stop with this ever encroaching creep of authoritarianism and totalitarianism in our online spaces and the invasions of our privacy. But once again, now that it's the liberals who are introducing it, you're not seeing the same kind of pushback, even if there is some. I'm not suggesting there isn't any pushback at all, but you know damn well it's extremely tamped down and much, much quieter and less coordinated than it was when it was trying to be introduced under the Conservatives. But make no mistake about it, both sides will end up getting their way eventually, right? And although now it's going to happen under the Trudeau Liberal regime, but Pierre Poilievre supports it, and I guarantee there's a lot of them those conservatives who support it as well. Emily Laidlaw, a law professor at the University of Calgary, who is the co-chair of the government's advisory group on the legislation, said she hopes the legislation will abandon the takedown deadline and approach. It is incredibly difficult to assess content at the margins when it comes to issues of terrorist propaganda and hate propaganda, she told CBC News. That regime in 2021 would have incentivized over removal of anything that had just even the whiff of political controversy. What happened after Bill C-36? When the 2021 federal election was called, C-36 died without ever having gone to committee for debate. The Liberal election platform papered over the loss with a pledge to introduce new online harm legislation within the first 100 days of being reelected. Instead of meeting that self-imposed deadline, the Liberal government waited until March of 2022 to announce that it had created an expert advisory group as the next step to developing legislation to address harmful online content. The group's mandate was to provide advice on a legislative and regulatory framework that best addresses harmful content online. By the end of 2023, the government still had not met its 2021 promise to introduce new legislation, and the members of the advisory board were growing frustrated. In November, they published an open letter urging the government to introduce its new bill so its merits could be debated in Parliament. In the letter, the advisory group and other experts warned that the lack of governance has put Canadian children at greater risk online than their counterparts in much of the democratic world. What do the experts want to see in the bill? According to the open letter, members of the advisory board want the legislation to contain 5 key elements. A requirement that digital platforms conduct risk assessments on products used by Canadians and act responsibly, including by upholding fundamental rights to protect us from harm. Right? This is where they get into the Orwellian use of the words, right? And that is done on purpose as a means to convince the dumbed down and indoctrinated masses that it's for your own good, folks. A special duty to protect children from harm, as if, like, who could possibly be against that? Like I say, the rhetoric that they use, it's just so deceiving. A regulator for online harm with the powers to investigate and audit digital platforms, impose fines, and prescribe corrective measures. A provision requiring an avenue to audit and verify that digital platforms are meeting their obligations under the Act by sharing data with researchers, right? So once again, it's not just that they're going to rely on these whether it's porn outlets or social media to, do what they're told. No, they want to have it so that they have a way to make sure that, so they can peek behind the walls, right? And peep into invade our privacies in a multitude of ways. So they will have access to all of this stuff. That's what that says. And an online forum for victims affected by platforms' content moderation practices. An online forum. Well, yeah, no talk about here is, parents should act responsibly, right? No. Once again, the government want to be the proverbial authoritarian mommy and authoritarian daddy over not just you as an adult, but your children as well. They don't want you to have any role or responsibility in that. And that should outrage anybody, regardless of your political affiliation or what side of the political divide you fall on. Owen Charters, president and CEO of BGC Canada, formerly Boys and Girls Club of Canada, said the new bill must focus on children and accountability. Predominantly, what we see is real harms and issues happening to young people, or for young people, Charters told CBC News. It is a bill that really needs to take this into account and really hold companies accountable for what they have for a long time said is not their responsibility. And this is one thing I'll point out about Section 230, because all these companies that you're talking about, these big social media platforms, they are American companies for the most part, right? Or you get like TikToks, but these are companies that aren't, Canadian controlled companies. So all they have to do, and because they have the legal protection, in particular the U.S. companies, they have the legal protection of Section 230. They don't have to do anything. They could just simply remove their services entirely, which once again, that means we all suffer. And this is something that, and of course, the establishment media would love nothing more than now to get back into being part of the center stage and having these social media platforms, fading by the wayside. Anyways, let me just read a little bit more here. Charter said that if this new legislation does not require reported content to be taken down within 24 hours, it should still require that companies identify harmful content and take it down when they can. So basically, this is saying they won't know what the full details of the bill is until it's introduced in the House of Commons this week. Anyways, let me just move beyond that. And once again, this will be linked in the description of the video below because there is another. This is, I believe, it's a newer article. Actually, no, it's basically the same. Well, let me just bring this up. Let me bring this up because it kind of covers one of the areas that we were getting to in terms of the online regulator. So this is another CBC News article under the politics section, of course. Ottawa to create regulator to hold online platforms accountable for Ottawa to create regulator to hold online platforms accountable for harmful content sources. New regulator will be separate from the CRTC. So yeah, multiple, not just the CRTC, but now a whole new regulator, a whole new ministry of truth, right? It's reported by Nama Weingarten and Travis Hanraj, February 25th, 2024. The Online Harms Act, expected to be introduced by the federal government on Monday, will include the creation of a new regulator that would hold online platforms accountable for harmful content they host, CBC News has confirmed. The new regulator body is expected to oversee a digital safety office with the mandate of reducing online harm and will be separate from the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission, the CRTC, sources say. Two sources, including one with the federal government, with the knowledge of Monday's legislation, confirmed the creation of the office, saying it will require Canadian websites to uphold a duty to reduce harm and comply with federal law. CBC News is not identifying the sources because they were not authorized to speak publicly on the matter before the bill is tabled in Parliament. It is not clear whether the regulator will have power only over online platforms hosted in Canada or over all websites accessible by Canadians. Well, that will be interesting to know for sure. The Canadian press first reported that a new regulator would be part of forthcoming online harms legislation. The government is also planning to establish a new ombudsperson whose job would be to field concerns from members of the public who encounter problematic material or scenarios online, CP previously reported. And we know how well that works, right? Basically toothless. These ombudsmen that they account to pretend that they'll hold government to account. When has that ever come to fruition and acted out in reality to do, as they pretend or suggest it is what it's meant to do, and actually that played out properly in the real world? It doesn't. It doesn't. It's just more political language to persuade or convince the populace. Don't worry, man. We're going to protect you. Just sit back. Don't worry. We got this, right? Yeah. And sadly enough, there's a lot of Canadians who will fall for that nonsense. Sources say some components of the new bill will be modeled on the European Union's Digital Services Act. According to the European Commission, its act regulates online intermediaries and platforms such as marketplaces, social networks, content sharing platforms, app stores, and online travel and accommodations platforms, right? So yeah, they want to have even more control. They already control basically everything you can do in the physical space, but they want to duplicate that, replicate that in your online digital spaces as well. They want to have complete and utter control of every aspect and area of your social and economic lives, online or off. In an interview on Sunday, Michael Geist, Canada Research Chair in Internet and E-commerce Law at the University of Ottawa, told CBC News there's a need for some kind of governance structure to tackle harmful online content, but the devil will be in the details of what regulators will entail. The government already saddled the CRTC with many issues that fall beyond its expertise, he said. It's hard to judge the new governance structure until we see it. It's actually a bit of a wild card. The government's proposed legislation will focus on protecting children and youth from the dangers of the internet, according to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We need to do a better job as a society of protecting our kids online the way we protect them in schoolyards, in our communities, in our homes across the country, Trudeau told reporters in Edmonton on Wednesday. Well, you're a parent, Trudeau. Why don't you take that personal responsibility of taking care and protecting your own kids and allow Canadian parents to do the same. Oh, no, you can't do that. No, you want to have complete control. Because once again, authoritarian mommy, authoritarian daddy, forget about the parents, right? They want to completely circumvent and upend anything remotely resembles for personal accountability, personal responsibility, or the family unit in general. Monday's legislation by the government is expected to present an alternative to Bill S-210 proposed by independent Senator Julie Maville Duchesne. That bill requires a Canadian to verify their age to access porn online, with the establishment of a digital ID verification system as a potential method. A House of Commons committee is set to study S-210, as the owners of Canadian adult website Pornhub said they won't rule out blocking Canadians from the site if measures to verify the age of users are passed. Because once again, to verify the age of users, it sounds good in theory if they're saying to verify kids' age, but what does that mean? That means everybody. That means all adults who, it's completely legal, right? Whether you agree with it or not, it's completely legal for adults to go onto porn websites. But in order to prove your age, even if no matter if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, or 80 years old, or above for that matter, you're going to have to verify your age. So it's not just that kids will have to verify their age and show some form of digital ID. It means that all Canadians, no matter what your age are, adults alike, will have to do the same. We will never, ever take the private identifying information of our users, Solomon Friedman, a partner and vice president of compliance at Ethical Capital Partners, which owns Pornhub's parent company, said in a previous interview. Trudeau said the Liberal government is opposed to age verification system for porn websites, an option endorsed by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre last week. Poilievre's office later clarified that the Conservatives oppose any kind of digital ID as a method of doing so. Well, how else would you do it? The devil's definitely in the details, right? When age verification laws passed in Utah last summer, Pornhub blocked access to its site, and demand for virtual private networks surged by 847%, according to Top 10 VPN, which analyzes spikes in VPN demand. Montana, one of the states where age verification laws passed last year, saw a 482% increase in demand for VPN, which is used to hide people's locations online. So once again, there's already ways to circumvent this, right? And even both of these leaders are playing fast and loose with the language, but depending on what article you're reading, on any particular day, or what they're saying in front of the microphone, it's hard to tell what they mean. And I mean, they are politicians. So one minute they're saying they support it, the next minute they're saying they're not. What are they reading the polls, right? See what's popular? No, stand on principle for once, you bunch of spineless jellyfish, rather than relying on polls or the popularity to determine or dictate whether you support these things or not. That would be my suggestion. But make no mistake about it. Even if Trudeau's pretending, see, this is what I mean. Good cop, bad cop. Mr. Jones or Mr. Smith. So they'll both pretend to be against one thing that the other side is supporting, but, to compromise, to show some kind of bipartisanship, right, is they'll come together and probably both support each other at your and I expense, right? Make no mistake about that. Not that I'm making that prediction per se, but I could definitely see it happening. And we will eventually find out when all this stuff comes to light, which it will come to light. The possibility of age verification system rang alarm bells among privacy experts who worry about the risk of Canadians sharing their personal information with external sources. The regulators echo the online harms bill that Trudeau government proposed ahead of the 2021 election. It would have created a digital safety commissioner as a watchdog for social media companies, required to weed out child pornography and other harmful content. Public consultations for these rules were met with strong criticism from privacy experts and civil liberties groups, who said a proposed measure giving companies 24 hours to remove flagged harmful content would encourage platforms to be overly cautious and result in the suppression of free speech. The bill ultimately died in the order paper when the Liberals called an election. Trudeau then, yeah, we know that. Okay, so anyways, so I'll bring that up once again. Let me just close these two up, because they will be linked in the description of the video below, or the live stream below. But yes, so here we go. let me bring this on. This is a National Post article, so not necessarily going to be simply just parroting, right, CBC or liberal talking points. So you get a little bit of alternative here, but let me just bring this up and make sure that's on there. Yeah, okay. So, Jesse Klein, the unnerving Canadian political consensus on internet censorship. Pierre Poilievre channels his inner Justin Trudeau with support for freedom-killing anti-porn legislation. So, once again, Jesse Klein here is pointing out the fact that both of them are supporting this, but yet the political rhetoric is to suggest, or the way the CBC is narrating it is, oh no, they're both against it. Well, somebody better get their answer straight, right? And their rhetoric sorted out, because it seems to be very confusing and probably purposely so. So this is, like I say, Jesse Klein, February 25th, 2024. Anyone hoping the conservative government would put a halt to the incessant creep of online censorship, surveillance, and controls brought in by Big Brother, or I mean Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, is in for a rude awakening. Asked by reporters this week if the Tories would require adult entertainment websites to implement age verification systems, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's answer was straight and to the point. Yes. Well, right? Straight and to the point. Yes. That sounds like, it sounds like he supports it to me. Yes, right? I mean, it only has one meaning properly. Right. The Conservatives previously demonstrated their openness to imposing draconian rules on our already overregulated internet last year when they sponsored Bill S-210 in the House of Commons and then joined the regulation-loving NDP and Bloc Québécois in passing it on second reading. So once again, not just the Libcons, but the NDippers and the Bloc Québécois. So in other words, all of the establishment federal parties support this stuff. Keep that in mind, because when all the government hacks come together, yeah, that's when your freedoms and privacy are definitely at the most gravest threats, right? Or going to suffer the most gravest threats or harms. Known as the Protecting Young Persons from Exposure to Pornography Act, but once again, as if that is even going to happen. But anyways, whatever. Bill S-210 would make it an offense punishable by a fine of up to $500,000, $500,000 for porn sites to operate without implementing a prescribed age verification method. Exactly what those methods would be is not laid out in the bill and would be up to government mandarins to figure it out. So this is how they get the plausible deniability. Oh, well, it's not, digital ID isn't specifically written within the bill, apparently, right? But, these regulators or this new regulator, well, they could very well do it in turn, right? So that's a good way to play the political language game. And, that plausible deniability, or the fact that like, oh, I didn't say that, but yet nudge, nudge, wink, wink, right? It's going to happen regardless. Exactly what those methods would be. Okay. Poilievre's office said his party is not in favor of digital IDs, and Conservative MP Karen Vecchio, who sponsored the bill, said that there should be no direct collection of identity documentation by the site publisher from the pornographic site, no age estimates based on the user's web browser history, and no processing of biometric data for the purpose of uniquely identifying or authenticating a natural person. So, no, they're saying, no, that these websites shouldn't be doing it. No, they don't want the private companies to have that kind of information. Actually, I think the private companies would have more of an incentive to protect, their users, right? Because their users are their users, right? It's in their economic bottom line and their self-interest to do so. Whereas, no, what I'm getting from this is, no, place that in the hands of this online regulator, right? So in the hands of government, which is a much, much graver concern and threat to our privacies. This leaves few viable options. Some American states have enacted similar laws requiring users to upload copies of their driver's license. The downside is that this exposes people to identity theft and other abuses, especially in an industry characterized by an abundance of sites whose ownership is not always clear, and criminals who commonly disguise malware as adult content. And it will likely do little to prevent underage people from viewing pornography, as photographs of government ID are far easier to forge than the real thing. Not only can this be done by a tech-savvy youngster using Photoshop, there's already been at least one case of a website selling AI-generated fake IDs capable of bypassing online age verification measures. So we already know, and this is just another example, that not just VPNs, but there's a myriad of ways to circumvent what these bills are meant to do, which is why I suggest, and I would say with almost 100% knowledge on the fact that it is not going to function as intended. If you're truly worried about your kids, having access to online pornography, I recommend you take that personal responsibility on yourself to do what you can to reduce that potential or eliminate it entirely, as best you can. Because if you're relying on government doing that or government legislation, well, you can see already right here in just a couple examples where that is not going to be the case. And you'll have a false sense of security or protection for your child. Other options include using facial recognition software to access users' webcams to determine age, which is even more creepy, and requiring viewers to submit their credit card information. Yet most adults are going to be leery about handing their credit card to some random porn site, fearing that they will be charged a subscription fee or that their banking information will be sold to the highest bidder on the dark web. As it stands, visiting an adult website entails minimal risk, but if users are forced to register with their personal information and credit cards, they are left at the mercy of unscrupulous site owners and hackers with a history of targeting pornographic websites. And I'll add government as well, right? Given that these systems have serious privacy implications, legitimate sites that strive to comply with the law and the sex workers making a living from the safety of their homes will take a financial hit. Montreal-based Pornhub saw its traffic drop by 80% after Louisiana required the use of digital ID to access online porn, while shadier sites that operate in Eastern Europe and elsewhere will continue to do business as usual. Another great point. In order to try to prevent such practices, S210 would allow the government to set up an agency to monitor compliance and give it the ability to petition the federal court to force internet service providers to block websites that are found to be flouting the law. This bill does make an exception for content that has a legitimate purpose related to science, medicine, education, or the arts, but the line between art and pornography is not always clear. Former United States Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart once famously admitted that there is no objective standard by which to judge obscene material, stating merely that I know it when I see it. This is not the standard we should want our laws to be based upon, nor do we need government bureaucrats dictating where the line between artistic expression ends and pornography begins. Make no mistake, online age verification laws are de facto censorship regimes. S210 would create a whole new bureaucracy to monitor the internet for content the state deems to be too obscene for minors and give it the ability to block adults from accessing otherwise legal content. This is not dissimilar from how things operate in communist China, and it would not be at all surprising if other types of content eventually get blocked by Canada's growing censorship apparatus. Great point there. Pornhub, one of the few Canadian success stories of the digital age, has already said it would consider pulling out of Canada if the bill passes. Others will surely follow suit, forcing Canadians with even a modicum of technical knowledge, including youth, to spoof their locations by using a VPN or route their internet traffic through Tor. Many will begin searching for adult materials on the dark web, which is rife with child pornography, violent imagery, and other unsavory content. So once again, it just sends it down into the deeper dark recesses of the internet, where things are probably much, much worse, right? Bill S10 may never become law, but the Liberals' long-awaited online harms bill, which is expected to be tabled next week, is likely to go even further. Unfortunately, we don't seem to have any opposition parties willing to take a stand against this type of privacy-invading, job-killing legislation, or anyone to state that it is parents who should be responsible for what their children do online, not the government. I mean, great point there, Jesse Klein. Great article. Once again, this will be linked in the description of the below. But I will just point out, as yes, there are parties in Canada, and just a couple of them I can think off the top of my head would be the PPC and the Libertarian Party of Canada, who are against this kind of stuff. But once again, based on Canada's first past the post system and the fact that there's such a sizable majority of Canadians who rely on that big government, that status quo, the ruling establishment, whether they agree with this kind of stuff or not, is they're more than willing to be mum's the word, sit down, shut up, and allow this stuff to take place. Like I say, whether they agree with it or not, they're not going to rock the proverbial boat, that they've been using to sustain themselves and keep them afloat for all of eternity, from cradle to grave. This is the problem with big government and people becoming so reliant on it, right? They become captured to a degree, which in turn affects all of us in a democracy, in a system where it's mob rule, whether it's through a minority or a majority. And based on the first past the post system, you folks know it can actually be a minority, not necessarily a majority. I was just going to get into see if there's any more comments before I continue on a little bit more here. Just got a few other things to cover on this one. I'm not going to keep this live stream going too awfully long because, like I say, I just felt that this was really important. So I just wanted to do it, just talk about this one particular, because it's in our face. It's coming front and center and it's coming fast and hard. So I wanted to talk about this particular subject matter, all alone. Right? I got lots of other stuff on the back burner and things I definitely want to talk about. And as you folks know, I don't play the algorithm thing. I know how to do it. I know if you talk about this particular thing that's popular, right, in the algorithms these days, it'll give you a boost and all that stuff. I seen that even play out in real time when I covered Tucker Carlson, right? So I seen how that worked and where I went from just, hundreds of views to thousands of views overnight. But once again, I'm not worried about, playing these games. I'm not in it to play games. I'm in it to properly educate, inform, and enlighten people. And, if it's less popular, if it bumps me out of the algorithm, then so be it. The information is there and easily accessible for anyone who wants to find it. Right. But anyway, so yeah, let me just bring this on because this just for you folks that maybe aren't privy to this or familiar with it. And once again, this will be linked in the description as well, or it already is actually, same thing happened. And this was back in 2012, folks, right? This is like what, 12 years ago. So no, nothing is new under the sun. And like I say, the lib cons, the conservatives, the liberals, the end-dippers, they are all hell-bent and determined on using the pretense of, protecting the children. Same with, think about COVID. A lot of the rhetoric they used for quite some time, it wasn't just the old people, but to protect the children and stuff. The rhetoric that they use, once again, that's the political cover they use to, once again, encroach and creep on into your privacy, your private lives in a myriad of ways. So yeah, Vic Taves draws line on lawful access. You're with us or the child pornographers. This was, once again, Jesse Klein, right? So yeah, Jesse's familiar with this because he covered this same thing 12 years ago. So I'm sure he's quite knowledgeable on the subject matter, which really explains, the last article I just read, right? From recent times. Matter of fact, from this month, just a few days ago. So once again, this was published February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2012. Public Safety Minister Vic Toes attempted to demonize opponents of his new internet law. You're either with the government or with child pornographers, he said on Monday. It isn't the first time he sought to demonize critics. In November, he said liberals should finally stop putting the rights of child pornographers and organized crime ahead of the rights of law-abiding citizens. 2 weeks ago, he urged the NDP to listen to the police, listen to the provinces, and support these balanced measures that protect law-abiding Canadians and their children, right? Use the same rhetoric. They use the same rhetoric. These statements were made in regards to the conservative so-called lawful access legislation, a bill that will require private internet service providers to install costly monitoring equipment on their networks and hand the government information on Canadians' online activities with minimal court oversight. But the facts don't support any of the minister's statements. Liberal governments backed their own version of lawful access legislation as far back as 1999. Hardly evidence of opposition to the concept, and police have failed to provide evidence that such legislation is necessary to combat the scourge of child pornography. Internal emails from the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police show they could find no good examples to support their demand for greater access to private internet communications. Furthermore, every provincial privacy commissioner, along with the federal commissioner, has warned of the dire privacy implications of this legislation. Even bureaucrats in Mr. Tay's own department aren't buying his arguments, not to mention the fact that, save a few child pornographers, everybody is against kiddie porn. No pun related. I believe that's what that means, right? So yeah, exactly. We're all against this stuff. So to pretend, right, and to play such divisive tactics and to use such rhetoric, as the means to get Canadians on board with now supporting something that, as you see, it goes all the way back to the Liberals in 99, to the Conservatives in 2012, to back to the Liberals and Conservatives and NDP and Bloc now in 2024. So they're still coming at you. Once again, you're talking 25 years later. Once again, they're hell-bent. This is what governments do. They are hell-bent, and they will somehow, some way, they will find a way. They will wait till they've propagandized enough people, where they've created enough division, where they've stirred up enough fears that they can finally implement their means and measures of control. And make no mistake about it, if you're not willing to stand in full opposition to this and not shy away from it by the sheer fact that they're using the rhetoric more or less same along lines as Vic Tays is, well, if you don't support this bill, what do you support? The kind of stuff that they're suggesting, right? So yeah, you need to be willing to stand brave and bold against that kind of rhetoric and say, no, this has nothing to do with that. I'm all for defending my child. Matter of fact, I will take that personal responsibility on myself. I don't need government to do so. So get your hands off of my privacy and hands off my internet and hands off my freedoms, or online freedoms. So anyways, just to bring this one up, what are we at? 106. Actually, I'll probably have this one tied up by the hour and a half mark, folks. Once again, thanks for all you folks who have joined the stream. I really, really appreciate it. Please, if you wouldn't mind, hit that thumbs up. And you know what? Feel free to share this content as well, right? I really appreciate if you would. So this one here, this was reported back on February 21st. Conservative government would compel porn websites to verify age of users, Poilievre. Senate private members bill would require age verification to access pornography online. This is Mickey Jurek from the Canadian Press, February 21st, 2024. So once again, more information that suggests, yes, both support it. And there's another article here as well. Ask about online harms bill. Poilievre raises Trudeau's past use of blackface. So, of course, misdirection, right? Misdirection. Both sides of the political divide play the misdirection thing. And once again, neither of them are willing to protect your online privacy or prevent these kinds of crouching forms of digital enslavement. Because that's think about it. Once you have digital ID becoming the new normal and something that's accepted that you just do, how much longer before a CBDC gets introduced? How much longer before a CBDC, central bank digital currency, right? So the government can track all of your economic transactions and digital ID. Once those are both implemented and conjoined, then you basically at that point in time, you do have a duplicate of China's social credit system, but come, through multiple bills and under a different name, right? They're not even honest to tell you that they're trying to basically duplicate China's social credit system, but it will eventually land on our shores and in our digital spaces, with Canadians barely even knowing that that's what took place, which is the most dangerous part at all. The fact that Canadians are so woefully inadequately informed about these kinds of threats to our online freedoms. So yeah, that'll be linked in there. We got that other one in terms of more online content. And then here's another one. Let me just bring this one on. Not that I typically share Press Progress, which is, very left-leaning and progressive, they call it, media site. But yeah, so here is not just Pierre Poilievre, right? No, you also have other conservatives, and this conservative in particular. So like I say, this is from Press Progress. Conservative MP says he trusts porn companies won't leak digital IDs of Canadians who visit porn websites. Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives voted to introduce digital IDs for porn users. This report by Luc Lebrun, February 22nd, 2024. One of Pierre Poilievre's Conservative MPs says Canadians who visit porn websites can trust companies won't leak their personal information on or viewing histories if a plan to mandate digital IDs for porn websites becomes law. According to Conservative MP Garnet Genius, the invisible hand of the free market would prevent such data breaches from ever happening in the first place. Yeah, it's government that would create the legislation. And like, this is so crazy. This is the thing with conservatives. They pretend that they support the free market, but yet they want to control and dominate and micromanage what is left of the free market, right? That's just the thing. No, the free market, for any conservatives out there, in case you folks forget, and it sure as hell seems like a lot of you do, free market is the absence of government intervention or regulation in terms of the economy. That's what a free market is. Look it up sometime. There's dictionaries online and offline. Unbelievable the kind of political rhetoric and spin that, like I say, both sides of the political divide put under this stuff to give political cover to get people to accept it, right? To accept their own social and economic enslavement. This week, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre raised eyebrows after affirming his party's support for controversial legislation introducing a digital ID system to verify the identity of anyone accessing pornography on the internet. Top law professors have widely criticized Bill S-10 as poorly drafted legislation that is unconstitutional and likely to result in Canadians being blocked from accessing a wide range of websites unrelated to pornography. Similar laws have been struck down as unconstitutional in a number of U.S. states, while international governmental reports looking into the issue have concluded using a digital ID to verify porn users raises serious privacy and security concerns. Because you also got to think about, too, the kind of progressives, they don't want people messing with their own, promiscuity and sexual deviancy in terms of what they do online. So there will be people, like I say, progressives that will be against it. But once again, their leaders, their rulers will just introduce it in a different way and try to convince their own people, their own supporters that no, we're doing it because it's against those darn conservatives or those bad people on the opposing side of the political divide, which will convince a bunch of them to just go along to get along, right? Make no mistake about that. But in a recent TAG TV interview, the Conservative Shadow Minister for International Development defended Poilievre's support for the anti-porn bill against criticisms that it raised serious privacy concerns. Some people are critical for ideological reasons, and they say, well, if there's even a scintilla of a risk that there could be some privacy breach, then we shouldn't provide this protection, Genius told TAG TV's Tahir Gora. The way that the bill works is that the companies are responsible for undertaking meaningful age verification. So the companies providing this have a responsibility to have meaningful mechanisms in place to verify the ages of those that are accessing sexual content. While Genius conceded Canadians may have concerns about the possibility their names or viewing histories could be made public in a data breach, he stressed companies that provide sexual content have an incentive to prevent that from happening, but they don't. When the federal government, the federal liberals introduce a regulator in their own form of their online harms bill, that will be the ones that will be collecting all this information instead, right? So once again, see how this all manipulation is taking place? See how they're completely propagandizing, misconstruing, and misrepresenting things and playing both sides of the political divide against each other to further confuse and confound the masses? You see how that's taking place? I know I do. Obviously, those companies have an interest in protecting the privacy of people who provide that age verification, Genius explained. The concern is that, okay, if somebody has to provide age verification, does that mean that there's risk that their name will get out that they've been accessing this material? But the companies have an incentive to ensure protection for privacy. So anyways, folks, that should pretty much do it. So anyways, we see how, like I say, the rhetoric is coming fast and hard from both sides. And once again, as a means to completely confuse and confound the people so they just don't know what to think about these things. But that's why people like myself, I'm here to help in that regard. Right? Anything the government does, first of all, it never, turns out to be anything even remotely how they promote or tout it, right? It's not going to do anything remotely resembling what they suggest, right? It's not going to protect your children. Once again, that is your responsibility. as parents, right? That is something that parents really need to step up the plate and start doing, and stop relying on offloading this kind of responsibility onto governments who fail at every junction and every turn. I mean, come on. Healthcare system, right? Education, well, the indoctrination system. I mean, how many there is no area where governments touch where they don't completely not only they not do what they say they intend to do, but they basically do the opposite. I mean, everything that the government touched, and especially in quasi-socialist countries like Canada, it just makes things much, much worse. And we all know that. We all have the real world example of that. It's undeniable and in your face at this point. Anyways, I really appreciate you folks joining the stream. I'm going to just read a few more comments and then we'll tie this bad boy up. Yeah, let me just take a drink here, folks. Okay. Teens at 16 years of age can't drink, but they can go fight wars in other countries and come back with worse trauma and addictions if they survive. Another excellent point. Really glad you pointed that one out as well. Yeah, right. Like I say, for governments to pretend they care about your kids, I mean, nothing could be further than the truth. Nothing could be further than the truth. Not sure what the legal age is anymore. Yeah. Okay, what's this? Yeah, the 9 scariest words. We're from the government and we're here to help Ronald Reagan, right? Which is kind of ironic considering he was from the government too. But hey, at least he was honest enough and forthright enough to acknowledge that, right? So you got to give the man at least kudos for that. Not knowing the legal age is the plan. Blurred lines. Another great point, GTO Mama. Always remember when you tell a child no, that means to them, why not? What am I missing here? LOL. And that's so true. I mean, I just got to use in my own personal anecdotal experience. You know, I drank when my kids were growing up, partaked in the cannabis stuff, right? You know, I had some bad habits. I used to smoke cigarettes even, and I'm glad I gave them up. I've given up, you know, all of that stuff, right? And this is the thing. Yeah, even the weed. Yeah. I've given up all of these vices, right? And I think I'm a much better person, much better. I'm becoming even more well-adjusted as a consequence, and stronger and more resilient because I'm not using them as crutches to prop myself up, right? That's where I'm creating more resiliency in myself, and it's helping my mind. It's helping my physical, you know, my physical body, my health. I'm really appreciative of that. But yes, you know, if you went by the fact that I did these things, you would think just by sheer fact that my kids grew up in that environment, although my wife didn't do any of them. So they had the counterbalance of that, right? Which was, I think, actually a very important thing. Because they might have seen, like, sometimes when I was heavy, like a real happy and joyful and blissful in terms of, you know, drinking and stuff like that. But they also seen sometimes the dark sides that can happen, or some of the ramifications and consequences in terms of, like, you know, the whole impaired charge and losing my livelihood and my career and all that. So, you know, I didn't have to preach or talk down to my kids, right? No, you just let kids observe, right? And try to give them good principles. And even if you're instilling good principles and values in them, even when you may fail and falter or fall back on them yourself, they are the ones that are privy to seeing that kind of stuff. And they will make their own self-corrective mechanisms built inside them to hopefully not duplicate the mistakes you made. Or at least, and I will say just for myself, when I did make mistakes, I was always the first one to point out to my sons that, yeah, in those examples, don't follow in your dad's footsteps. But I never, ever thought that it was ever going to be a good idea because, yeah, I was a kid. I was a teen at one time. I know what being rebellious is all about. And I would have never tried that failed tactic of using the heavy hand and thinking that that's going to prevent them. Because, like you say, the minute you tell them you can't do it, it's almost certain that they're going to be curious or inquisitive or at least rebellious and do it in spite of your efforts. And so that's another great point. Who was that? Yeah, the Mad Catter. Good point there. At least that's how I was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, me as well. Me as well. We're human. We're human after all. My screen minimizing and shutting off. YouTube games continue. Geez, that's sorry about that, GTO Mamba. You could always give it a try over on Rumble if you have access to that, or I guess you could do the Facebook, you could do the Twitter thing, or of course Odyssey as well if you're having troubles with YouTube. But anyways, yeah, sorry to hear about that. Independent senator. Yeah, yeah, exactly. All appointed by Trudeau for the most part, right? So yeah, independent, my ass. They're trying to remove parental rights and own your children. That is so true. And that's what I see. Like whether it's this stuff or the trans issue stuff, right? Education. You know, they literally are. They're basically trying to, yeah, what you're saying is remove, parents from the equation entirely, because they are fearful of the fact that parents like us are the ones, we're the backstop. We're the fortress. We are the wall to counter, right? And deflect all that propaganda and all that ideology that they keep trying to jam into our kids and our grandkids' head. So yes, that's why they're trying to remove us from the equation. But great point. Thank you. Been listening whilst doing chores. Awesome, Mad Catter. Thank you. And like I say, I'm going to tie this bad boy up now. So minute 20, that seems like a pretty good time to end it. I really appreciate you folks that did join the live stream. Like I say, all the material that I covered in this will be linked in the description of the stream below. And I'll be looking forward to doing another live stream because there's lots of other areas to talk about and to bring the philosophical lens, right? To bring truth, to bring logic, and our means, the most powerful means we have to hold power to account, which is observing objective reality and adhering to strict adherence to the principles that we espouse, rather than bending, wielding, or yielding, or manipulating them to the point where it suits a political purpose. Because that's what they do, which means we have to be the counter to that and maintain and be steadfast in our adherence to our principles. And hopefully, in the end, we'll win out because of the fact that we stuck to our principles, and we have shown time and time again that we are the ones who are truly leading by example. So thanks to all you folks that joined the live stream. Really appreciate it. Have yourself a great day. This is the Canadian Libertarian, and I